There are things in this world that defy explanation, forces beyond human comprehension lurking in the shadows of reality. Science seeks to understand the unknown, to break it down into measurable parts, but sometimes discovery leads to horror rather than enlightenment. This is the story of a team of researchers who unearthed something they never should have found, an ancient living entity buried deep beneath the earth. What began as an innocent scientific curiosity quickly turned into an all-consuming nightmare, as the substance they uncovered was not just alive, it was waiting, and it was hungry. In a remote town, hidden deep in the woods, a group of scientists stumbles upon a peculiar black substance while excavating an abandoned mine. Unlike anything they had ever seen, it shifted and pulsed as though alive. Dr. Evelyn Carter, the lead scientist, felt an inexplicable dread the moment she saw it. The air was thick with an unshakable tension, the mine walls lined with eerie symbols long faded by time. Every step closer to the discovery brought a deeper unease, like a warning whispered from the past. The excavation team worked tirelessly, uncovering strange artifacts buried alongside the substance. Fragments of an ancient tablet, inscribed with unreadable markings, hinted at a long-lost civilization. Yet, their excitement overshadowed the growing sense of doom. As they collected samples, the ground trembled ever so slightly, unnoticed amid the frenzy of discovery. Curious yet cautious, the team transported a small sample of the substance to their laboratory. Under a microscope, it moved on its own, reacting to the presence of light and even sound. They exposed it to various elements, only to discover that it seemed to consume whatever it touched, growing in size. Dr. Carter meticulously documented every reaction, her notes filled with urgent scribbles and hastily drawn diagrams. The team's fascination quickly turned into obsession. Late at night, alone in the lab, Carter observed a peculiar phenomenon. The substance formed patterns, resembling symbols from the ancient tablets. It seemed to be communicating, but with whom? Or what? Her heart pounded as the shadows in the room felt darker, heavier, as if something unseen lurked within them. One night, a junior scientist, Jacob, accidentally spilled the substance on his hand. At first, nothing seemed out of the ordinary, but hours later his skin blackened and he screamed in agony as the substance burrowed into his flesh. The next morning, Jacob was gone, his lab coat lying in a pool of thick black residue. Security footage showed him staggering down the corridor, his silhouette writhing unnaturally before vanishing into the ventilation system. A frantic search ensued, but Jacob was never found. Instead, the walls bore strange, pulsing veins of the same black substance, as though the lab itself had begun to transform. The remaining scientists debated abandoning the project, but something held them back. A mix of scientific curiosity and an unspoken fear that leaving would be just as dangerous as staying. Panic gripped the facility as more unexplained occurrences took place. Lab equipment malfunctioned, security footage showed distorted images, and whispers echoed through empty halls. Those who came in contact with the substance developed a strange hunger, their eyes darkening as they craved more of it. Carter locked herself in her office, poring over her notes, trying to find a pattern, a solution. But the more she studied, the more she realized the substance was not simply an organism, it was an intelligence. One by one, her colleagues changed. Their speech slurred, their movements became jerky, unnatural. They would stand motionless for hours, staring into nothingness. Then, without warning, they would lunge at the uninfected, their mouths stretching open far beyond human capability, shrieking in tones that shattered glass. Dr. Carter ordered a quarantine, locking down the lab. But it was too late. The substance had seeped into the air vents, spreading its corruption through the building. Desperate to contain it, she sent an emergency distress signal, but no response came. The outside world was unaware of the nightmare unfolding within. Days passed. The power flickered, the temperature dropped, and an overwhelming silence filled the lab, broken only by the occasional guttural growls of the infected. Carter rationed what little supplies she had, hiding in a storage room, her ears straining for any sign of movement outside. One by one, the infected scientists lost their humanity. Their bodies twisted, merging with the growing black mass. Some retained their voices, begging for help, while others screeched in an otherworldly language. The walls pulsed as though the entire facility had become a living organism. The substance was no longer just a parasite. It was evolving, reshaping the world around it to fit its own alien design. Carter could no longer tell what was real and what was hallucination. She saw figures in the shadows, heard voices whispering her name. At times, she thought she saw Jacob, standing just out of reach, his face frozen in an expression of agony. With dwindling hope, Dr. Carter and the few uninfected survivors attempted to flee. They navigated the bloodied corridors, avoiding the grotesque figures that once were their colleagues. The exit was in sight when a monstrous form, a fusion of multiple bodies, blocked their path. It spoke with many voices, all pleading, all hungry. Realizing there was no way out, one of the survivors, Dr. Hayes, ignited a series of explosive charges set around the lab. "Run!" he yelled as he held back the monstrous abomination. The explosion engulfed the corridor, sending fire and debris crashing through the building. Carter and Lily barely made it out, watching in horror as the facility collapsed upon itself. But deep beneath the rubble, the substance still pulsed, still lived. Dr. Carter and the last survivor, a young intern named Lily, crawled out of the ruins. The lab was in flames, but the black substance still moved beneath the rubble, retreating into the earth. As sirens finally approached, Carter whispered, "It's not over. It's never over." Weeks later, reports surfaced of strange occurrences in the nearby town. The ground cracked open in places and dark tendrils reached for unsuspecting victims. Dr. Carter knew the truth. The substance was alive and it was still hungry. It had found new hosts. The nightmare was only beginning.